Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, where we're going to be reviewing what is included in your base license of Creo. My name is Rob Romanowski. I'm the Director of Sales Operations with 3HTI, and joining me today and hosting actually is Garry Hoffman, Vice President of 3HTI, Vice President of Sales, and also an industry veteran with approximately 28 years of experience. Garry was a top salesperson with PTC in the 90s, starting in 1991. So he is very familiar with the Creo packages. And what we're going to do today is kind of take a walk through history of what has been included in the packages in the past and how these packages evolved, so that regardless of what version or release of Creo or package that you have, you can understand what capabilities you currently have within your package, as well as the ability to see what has been included in the new Creo packages. And I'll say this, that PTC, especially over the past several years, has included not only more capabilities, but also extensions that were paid extensions that are now a part of the Creo Design Essentials package. So with that, Garry, why don't you take control and get us rolling?
Well, thank you, Rob. And I appreciate the, let me share my screen here. I appreciate the years, but here's the deal, I guess, guys. I've actually been now, as of last week, selling PTC products for 30 years as of September 10th. So actually even more than 29. And
wow.
Anyway, so it's been quite a while, and I forget your other statistics. So I guess time flies when you're having fun. If you asked me 30 years ago if I would still be doing this, I would have told you, no way, Jose. So the other great news is that we actually had a customer when I went to work directly for PTC in 1990. I had a customer by the name of Matthew James, who was a company name. And they were one of the few people that actually had an independent license of Creo. And at the time, you know, Creo was probably about, or ProENGINEER, we'll call it by the correct name, was about 16,000, and a Sun workstation was probably another 20,000. And this gentleman was a single man operation and had a license on his own. And he was one of 6 customers in the state of New Jersey. And I'm proud to say that Jim, who's with Matthew James, actually has converted to subscription, and he actually has renewed for 3 years up front. So, and I think that's a great thing, because you have somebody that we've had a relationship now for over 30 years, and I think he understands some of the benefits to reconfiguring software. So anyway, in that 30 years, I guess having said that, we also had a situation last week where PTC had told us something that I vehemently disagreed with. And I went to one of our other team members and said, hey, can you find me some information on this old packaging? And he did. And I'm going to share that with you just for a quick walk down memory lane, just to show you some of the complexity. The other thing is we have a client that's been with us for a number of years that is using, I think, a very, very old and dated package. And ultimately what happened was, you know, we had to go look that up, and that was circa 1998. I'll show you that. But just a quick analogy, I guess. You know, I have a couple of Sea-Doo jet skis, and it's been a fun, or Sea-Doo wave runners, or personal watercraft, or whatever they're called. And it's been a fun summer on the water. A very popular thing. And of course I see, hey, look at the new one for 2021. It has this thing and that thing. And, you know, there's a big difference in price between a 2012 or 2014 and a 2020 or 2021, but there's all this new fancy stuff. And I think, to be fair about it, some stuff really provides value, some doesn't. And it's a money-making scheme. You know, in my own personal life, when I was working at PTC in 1992, I bought a brand new Jeep Wrangler that cost me $15,000. And it didn't have this, it didn't have that. And it was a Wrangler. It was supposed to be simple and rugged and everything else. And then in 2007, I decided to buy another Jeep Wrangler that cost $30,000. And it's interesting. And why did I buy a new Jeep Wrangler? I bought a new Jeep Wrangler for 2 reasons. One reason, really, I guess it was safety. and I wanted to get airbags and ABS brakes. And I thought that was an important thing. And I basically paid twice the money. I'm looking at Jeep Wranglers. I probably won't buy one. Why? And today they're 60 grand. So they've come a long ways, obviously, in 28 years. But I think what's interesting, why would I consider buying one today? And one of the reasons that I would is that you have, you have when you're changing lanes, or you have things, if you've ever rented a new car, which I have, or a newer car, where the thing's going to automatically brake. And again, it kind of goes to safety, which is something that humans strive for. Is it worth it to have the backup camera and the collision avoidance and, all the fancier stuff? For the extra money, probably not. But I think depending on what you do, there's a value in it. So I think just to try to apply that same type of logic, as PTC software, ProENGINEER, and then Creo has evolved over the years, basically what happens is that they started out with a limited set of functionality. And as things evolve, PTC either will put things in the product for free. So you pay all this money every year for support, and you expect all this new stuff to come for free. Or, what they want you to do, and this was the game in perpetual software, hey, if you start out with this package, then you can just pay a little bit of money and we'll let you trade in your old package, provided you're active on support, and go with this newer package. So it's been really kind of a pretty ugly game, quite honestly, having been participated in it. And if you guys look at my screen, and this goes back to October 93, and as I said, I go back to 1990, but we had these packages that were fairly short-lived. And you can see, and I'm not going to go through this whole thing, it's just really a walk down memory lane, but we called them production packages or designer packages, and they kind of came out circa these years, and they were pretty quickly discontinued because we wanted to add all this new extra stuff on and charge you to upgrade it. So it's just the way things were done back then. And as I scroll here, you can see there's packages with piping and all kinds of good stuff. Wow, in April of 94, there were no new packages. We had the basic package and the industrial designer package, and I don't know, a lot of stuff, advanced machinist and sheet metal. And, there was more packages that came out than you could shake a stick at. And that's what we did is, we were into automobiles. I guess it was body tooling and body styling and, industrial designer 2 and son of industrial designer. And, we kind of keep moving along to here, ProENGINEER bundle, computer vision. So anybody that's been around for a while, as I have been, there's some pretty interesting stuff that were big fat packages with all kinds of options in them. And then there were simple packages with just a few options in them, like the part modeler. But I think what's interesting, and this is, in my opinion, having been around, this right here was called the ProENGINEER Foundation. Hopefully everybody can see this. I'll make it a little bit bigger. And this was an interesting package because in 1998, SolidWorks was really starting to, to irritate PTC. And one of the things that it's always been is that ProENGINEER is very expensive. It's very hard to use, blah, 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 and it's very powerful. But what's interesting is this package right here, I believe, was $5,995, believe it or not. And it's kind of interesting because it wasn't that expensive. Then what PTC did was they specifically took out any assembly capabilities. And you'll see, hey, you can get this advanced design. It's got, this module taken out in August of 98. And so there was a lot of different games being played, and there's a lot of different pieces of functionality in here that may or may not look like a big deal. And I think there's something here. And just for fun, a little bit more of a walk down memory lane. And unlike my Jeep analogy, software doesn't go in the right direction. Software, has gotten less expensive, less expensive, less expensive, and there's been more stuff added in. So I'm not sure why I'm in this business, but just for fun, I mean, you can look at like what, advanced assembly used to cost and the things that you would get in it. And, it goes back to where this was a very popular package, Advanced Designer 3, and this was 26 grand a year and probably about 22 23% for annual support. You had floating and locked. And again, some of these packages cost a lot of money, I guess is the point of this particular thing. Compaq, who remembers Compaq computers? So that's where we were. And just to kind of bring you up into, I guess, where we are now, if you would, PTC has a number of different, let me just skip back here, sorry. And I'll get back to this slide here, but we basically now sell the product in different offerings. And you can buy these packages that have certain pieces of functionality, kind of like buying a Jeep, if you would. You might have the Rubicon and you might have the, I don't know, the Willys edition or whatever it would be. So they kind of have different editions, and in these packages, you get different, slices of functionality. Same thing here, where a lot of people call it T1, T2, T3, T5, T4, whatever, T-Rex. So what I did was ultimately attempted to break this down starting back in 1998 when you took your basic Pro-E foundation, and to compare that. So this would be, T1, T2, T3, you kind of get that. And then they have different bits and pieces in it. And just as we kind of scroll down, what you'll see here is that, so this package right here, and I'll show you this, goes for $2,430 per year. This package, I believe, carried an annual maintenance of $1,500 a year, and back in the day was $59.95, to put it in context. And ultimately what you have here is you just get a lot more stuff in these newer packages. And again, some of it may be worthwhile. Some of it may not be worthwhile. Some of it, like when you buy a new vehicle, you're like, I don't need that. I'll never use that. At least that's what I say. And then all of a sudden you find yourself, well, that's pretty nifty. I can find myself using it. And remember this, I guess, this isn't about, what do you get in the package? It's ultimately about how do you improve either your own personal or somebody that works for you, their efficiency. And it's the old cliche, time is money, so to speak. So in any event, I think what's pretty interesting about it is that, you may spend a little bit more money, but if somebody is a lot more efficient, then hopefully you can get that as a payback. And, one of my analogies, back to my car analogy, I'm the king of analogies, self-professed, is, some of these features like this package here actually has advanced assembly extension. And we saw that was a big deal back to 1998, and that allows you to work in top-down design. It lets you work with zones. It lets multiple people work on assemblies at the same time. It lets you do a thing called notebook. So some really pretty interesting stuff. It lets you use copy geometry if you want to make a fixture or a jig or something of that nature. So sometimes that's a big deal. But in any event, the price of these two licenses, if you would, are considerably more. So that advanced assembly has always equaled something pretty big. And ultimately what's happened is, if you needed it, you needed it. But, I kind of, equate that to electric windows in a car, dating myself. And if you had a 4-door, sometimes you had to reach over to the rear back window and ultimately, roll it up by hand. Was it a pain? Sure it was. Today, most cars, I think, have power windows, and you realize what it is. So the reason for that analogy, even though this package is, the entry-level package, you can still do pretty much anything that you can do in this package. For example, it may just take you a lot more clicks. And again, it goes back to efficiency. There are certainly limitations, but what we've done, and we're happy to share this with anybody, is, really just put things in really kind of a matrix format to see, what does what. And what we did here is we have this little tab, and it's a little bit wordy, I guess you could say. And it just says, what does Pro Photo render? And just for old time's sake, some of these terms are Pro this or Pro that. So for some of you guys have been around for the ProENGINEER heyday, it's some of those other things. But it gives you an idea of, assembly, fastener, extension, light, assemble standard, fixing hardware, bolt screws, nuts, washers, and, from a standard library. If anybody's ever used this, what they would tell you is this is an incredible efficiency increaser, if in fact that's what you do. You know, there are certain things in here, and if you guys remembered some of the packages from the 90s with cabling and piping, we used to sell very, very expensive packages with these features in them that cost a lot of money. And if we go back to, you know, this basic package here, so again, this is the one from 1998. This is what we offer today with, you know, the backup camera and the collision avoidance and the lane detection and all that other good stuff. But it actually has piping and cabling in it. You may or may not need that. But guess what? If you do or you don't, it really doesn't cost any extra money. So I'm going to cover a couple of these, and we're not going to, you know, take too long today. But one of the things that PTC is offering is you can trade in one of your old licenses. You get a perennial discount. That means that every year that you continue to keep active on subscription, you'll receive that same percentage discount for the trade-in. And ultimately, you're paying an annual fee. If you don't pay the annual fee, then unlike perpetual software, the software will shut down. But the beauty about it is, if you want to go and reconfigure, if you bought this package and the following year you said, hey, I want to go down and ultimately buy something lesser, I think that's really what fits my needs. I want 2 of these versus 3 or whatever it is. We don't have play the same games where, hey, let me just upgrade you. And it's always an upgrade. There is no downgrade in what we did back in the 90s and really, you know, 2000 to about 2017. There was just, you had to pay more money and that was it. And you were locked in. The beauty is there's complete flexibility, and you can remix on an annual basis and ultimately get what best fits whatever the latest and greatest is, or more importantly, in whatever your application is. But one of the things that's kind of interesting, and by the way, whatever it's worth, if you guys are looking close enough, you'll see my name here at the top of Excel. And ultimately, I'm signed in because this is called Office 365. And we get Microsoft Teams, although we decided to use Zoom today, or we get Yammer or SharePoint or whatever else it is that you want with that. And that's, you know, that's the way Microsoft has gone. You know, if you look at my tray here, there's Adobe. Oh yeah, that's right. That's also a subscription. There's QuickBooks. That's a subscription. So subscription is something ultimately that people do today. We do it with the software that we purchase for our business, and it's, you know, it's the normal, not the other way. A lot of people don't want to give up. They think they purchase the software. And by the way, you don't purchase software. You don't own software. You have the right to perpetually use it, but you don't own anything, whatever that's worth. But anyway, a couple big things here is, one is you get this e-learning subscription. And that is the ability to access 26 different e-learning online self-paced courses. If you purchase this separately, this would be $725 a year just for fun. So there's a lot of benefit to that, as people really aren't going to classroom training like they used to for many, many reasons. And if you want to go in and bone up on, gee, I need to use piping, then, you know, away you go. You can just, you know, type in piping, it'll teach you to take you to different online classes, and you can learn how to do it. The other thing that we find fairly valuable is the home use license. This is something that SolidWorks used to provide. They currently don't do this. And, you know, it's nice if you don't have a VPN connection, you're traveling, and you need to use the license out of the office, you can do that. And away you go. You actually get 2 of these for a floating, and you get 1 of these for a lock license. So just to kind of go through this real quick, but, you know, feature is, you know, basically round shells. It's very basic features to create. Detail is for 2-dimensional drawings. Plotting, I think, is fairly self-explanatory. And just back in the, you know, back in 1990, we used to actually either sell ProPlot. This used to cost $1,000. And we would sell Pro CalComp, Pro Versatech, Pro HPGL for HP. I don't know if CalComp and Versatech plotters even exist anymore, but each one was $500. And if you bought all 3, you called it Pro Plot, you got a deal for $1,000. It's kind of funny to kind of think of it. You know, IGES and STEP, stuff like that. Pro Report for being able to create, you know, balloon, you know, assembly reports. linking bill of materials. Pro Legacy really isn't used a whole lot. It's kind of an old, old thing, a bit out of date. Sheet metal was something when it first came out, we charged a lot of money. And if you were paying attention, you saw there was a sheet metal package, and that's the fold, unfold, roll, unroll, etc. Welding for welding symbols, photo render, which is ultimately some, better than, just a shaded image, not really completely great ray trace stuff, but it has some capability. Web publish is a little bit of a throwback. Library access probably is too. That really dealt with when we used to actually distribute mechanical libraries, electronic libraries. Today, frankly, a lot of people just download that. Ecad's pretty useful because Ecad's going to allow you to actually interface with PC, Ecad products, from Mentor and Cadence and companies like that, Altium, for example, and be able to take in a board with skylines or libraries of components. So you can actually take the 2D geometry and actually make it 3D. So you can take these circuit boards and use them in an assembly, do analysis on them. ProProgram's kind of an interesting one because ultimately ProProgram will allow you to do if then else logic, but because you don't have advanced assembly, you can only do it on an individual part, not assemblies. You would actually need advanced assembly. Mechanism design's been around for a while, but it's basically to allow you to step through ranges of motion and do fundamental, kinematics, not dynamic studies. Model check is one that I think is really interesting because it allows you to put different standards in to make sure that your people are using best practices in the techniques they actually use for modeling. And what's interesting is if you were to buy CATIA, they have a thing called Qchecker, which was, both of these were originally developed by Rand. And, now this is from a German company, Model Check, and you might pay $10,000, $15,000 for this to go with CATIA. So I kid you not on that one. This comes free. Most people don't use it. Surface, which is really advanced surfacing extension, allows you to do, point-driven, create point-driven splines and then create surface patches. It is not the interactive surface design extension, which is really more of the industrial design type creation. Scan tools allows you to suck in, this itself used to cost a lot of money, but used to be able to allow you to suck in the, point cloud data from scanners. Warp surface, again, I think that's a bit of a throwback. This assembly performance is something where it would give you some assembly capability. So unlike Creo Foundation or ProE Foundation with none, this sort of is in between none and advanced assembly. So it'll do things like shrink wrap and things of that nature. Some more photo rendering, design animation, which is really kind of a fallout of mechanism design. Import data doctor, this is a bit of a an old type of thing. Same with web connectivity. I would say same with feature recognition tool. And I think with the advent of Creo, you start getting into Unite technology, which is the ability to ultimately suck in geometry from any CAD system. And then down here, you actually get into flexible modeling extension, where you can actually manipulate the geometrical features of a imported geometry. So when I say the geometrical, instead of trying to make it something that's smart, that understands this parent-child feature tree, which ultimately is kind of what this guy does. Ultimately, what flexible modeling does, it allows you to actually manipulate the geometry, not the features. Mannequin light is for anthropomorphic geometry. Advanced framework is interesting. So if you're doing, whether it's extrusions or steel work, and you want to have a library of how you're going to actually take, two-dimensional extruded geometry, and how you're going to actually miter that together, C-channel, things of that nature. That's where that comes in. There is some CAM functionality in here. There's some simulation for Creo Simulate, some mold analysis. We talked briefly about the intelligent fastener, ultimately being something where when you line up a fastener, and if you have a pattern, it's going to know to go in and put fasteners in all of those different holes. Freestyle is an interesting one. Freestyle is something that actually comes with any modern license of Creo. So this is the free extension, if you want to call it that. It's not something that you have to upgrade the package for. But ultimately what Freestyle has is the ability to take a blob of clay and to sort of push and pull that, you know, amorphically, to use a fancy term, to be able to, you know, to be able to create some geometry. Components are libraries of components, spark analysis. This works well for, you know, electronic vehicles, and, you know, ultimately seeing where electrical connections are going to, you know, potentially interfere or have a ground condition. We talked about flexible modeling. And then really this last, you know, few things here are cabling and piping, which are the ability to three-dimensionally route either, you know, cables or pipes. There's obviously a difference. And the way this really should start out is you use Creo Schematics Lite, which ultimately Creo Schematics Lite is the ability to create an intelligent two-dimensional ladder, logic diagrams, PNIDs, things of that nature. And then ultimately to create a list of, let's say, wires and drive cabling through there with different gauges of wire, different color of wire. And then finally with harness manufacturing is to take that after you lay it out in 3D, be able to stretch it out or lay it out and create a nail board. So anyway, guys, I covered a lot of ground pretty fast. There's a lot of stuff in here. You know, from some of the pricing, you can kind of take a look at it. You know, you can buy it floating or locked. This package here, for most people, we actually have a very aggressive discount for small and medium businesses that we provide for this. And if you work for a bigger company, I'm sorry, but I think, you know, the way software is often priced is the bigger guys get a bigger bang for the buck out of it. And, you know, sometimes you have to give the small and medium business a more competitive price. But, you know, last year, PTC actually raised the price of this significantly because I guess, again, it goes back to the price of this advanced assembly extension. And if you need it, you actually get 3-axis simultaneous milling, 4th and 5th axis positioning. And just for fun, just to kind of say, hey, you know, what is really the difference? And by the way, I didn't put tier 5 because tier 5 gets a little bit, you know, crazy expensive. So there's all this stuff that kind of comes in these more expensive configurations, if you would. But what you'll also see is the price goes up significantly. So again, I think the other thing you got to look at is in the CAD industry that there has always been this case. There's really a low-end market, you know, and then there's a high-end market. And I think what's interesting about Creo, it's the only product today that doesn't have a separate product for the low end and a separate one for the high end. It ultimately, you can buy and mix and match and get these different packages. Or if you want to have, let's say, geometric dimensioning and tolerancing GD&T advisor, you can purchase this a la carte. So really that's it, Rob, just to try to, as I said, keep on a time and go through this. I'm not sure what type of questions we have, but why don't we open it up and see what we have?
Well, I've been chatting with one of our customers. If you want to open up the Q&A session, I think you're going to have to get in touch with Eric offline.
Okay. Yeah, I think somebody was asking, you know, just asking of the 5,000, 11,000 for advanced to advanced plus is still such a gap. I'm not sure. We can certainly talk about that, Eric, but you know, I guess it is what it is. You know, it's what the market is, and I think, you know, when you look at, you know, for example, last week we're dealing with a company that makes toys, and if somebody makes toys, ultimately it's different. We're dealing with a division of Raytheon that are making military rockets from Cape Canaveral. And it's just kind of interesting because I was working on some of the stuff over the weekend, and you know, that's what you deal with. And I think if you are into that level of sophistication, if I showed you what, you know, the one client's configuration was, then it's kind of a big deal. So unfortunately, I don't recall the price of interactive surface design extension. I think, and don't hold me to this, to get that a la carte on an annual basis, it's $4,500. And I'll look that up if you guys want to hang on. I'll look that up. But that's part of the problem when you need to do something that is a little bit, I guess more intensive, or there's a specific need. This is, really when you get into this T3, T4, this is when these things really, really go up in price. So again, I think PTC is trying to be competitive with the SolidWorks of the world. And I think from a pricing perspective, they're extremely competitive. But, when you want to get into more advanced functionality, and by the way, a license at CATIA is 20 grand. So, if you kind of look at where we are compared to the competition, and I would say this is probably true of anything in life, the entry level price is generally pretty inexpensive, but there isn't a linear delta between the entry level price and the price for the expensive thing. It's exponential, which obviously you can see that really, I'd say any CAD system or just in this market in general. Anything else, Rob? Or
Gary, you are correct. The price for the interactive surface design extension is $4,500 for a locked
there you go.
license.
I win the prize today, so
You're good. You are good.
Anyway, so do we have any other questions, Rob? Or
no, that's it.
So anyway, here's the other thing too, guys, is not to sound like a salesy kind of guy, but if let's say that you want interactive surface design extension, and what PTC does is they have a lot of time limited offers. And I think one of the things for PTC is that what they're trying to do is trying to entice people to purchase stuff. That's their game, obviously. And for example, if you were to purchase a new license, and let's say a new license is $2,430, and you wanted interactive surface design extension, and let's say that was before the end of September, which is the end of their fiscal year, we have a thing that we call supersize. Some of this stuff is a little cliche, but you could actually get a license of ISDX2 for 50% off. So it's $2,250. So basically you can get a whole package for the price of actually less than you would pay, or I guess it's a little bit more. You'd get a whole package for what you would pay for just the ISDX. And again, what happens is that when you get that, if you want to go renew that the following year, then that price will continue to move forward. That's just not a 1 year, hey, here's your special. So there's all kinds of stuff that PTC has that they try to entice people. And I think especially in the pandemic, they're trying to give people incentives, and that's just sort of the game they play. So anyhow, so interactive surface design extensions, $4,500. If you want to swap packages, maybe you drop one and you buy a new one, then you're looking at like half the price. I think the other thing, just for people, one of the things you can do is we can actually sell a subscription. Typically, we want to sell a subscription for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or now even 4 years, and kind of lock people in from pricing. Again, if people on an annual basis want to remix, they can remix on an annual basis. But ultimately what happens is if people just say, for example, you need interactive surface design extension for one project, then ultimately you can actually get that for 90 days. Or you could get that for maybe your subscription has a duration of a month and a half. So if you wanted to just get that for a month and a half, we would prorate that $4,500 for a month and a half instead of 1 year. Or as I said, if you wanted to do something short term, it's for a project, you could do it just for 90 days. So anyway, there's a lot of complexity to the pricing, obviously, as you saw with some of the history here. So
Gary, another question was, what happened to reverse engineering extension?
Reverse engineering extension, I believe they actually discontinued. Actually, we may still sell that. I'm not sure. And I think to be fair about it, this sounds a little bit bad, but with PTC, they had certain things. They used to have a thing that they developed once for Sikorsky helicopter called Pro Composite. And, really probably not a good example, but that's, that's kind of long gone. They don't develop. It really never took off. One of the things that you can do, for example, like with reverse engineering extension, they had that product and they had scan tools. So ultimately, scan tools was kind of a precursor. So as far as reverse engineering extension, you can actually purchase that still. That's still around. I think scan
It
tools
is.
was kind of a first generation, if you would. So now they really kind of didn't really develop that. So that's one of the reasons why it gets thrown in. But reverse engineering extension still is developed, is a lot more sophisticated than scan tools. And just for fun, to purchase a locked extension, it's $4,970 annually. If you want to float it in between licenses, it's $14,900 annually. So it does exist.
Indeed, it does. Well, Garry, thanks for taking us through that. That was, obviously very detailed and I think very, very helpful. So if anybody has any other questions or you want to get in touch with us, you can just respond to the email invitations that were sent to you. That will connect with us at 3HTI. Actually, I'm going to show my screen real quick. Let me get the Zoom. Sorry about this. Here we go. So you can get in touch with us at info@3HTI, or you can respond to the emails that were sent as far as inviting you to the webinar today. And one more thing in closing is that for our customers, we will provide 2 hours of desk side coaching. So if you need to bone up on Creo, or if you have someone who's new with your company or whatever, and they just, you don't necessarily need a full-blown training session, but there's something specific that you need to understand a little better about Creo, we give all of our customers a 2-hour desk side coaching session. So we want to see you not only use the software, but use it as effectively and as efficiently as possible. So Garry, thank you very much for your time today. And also I want to thank everybody in our audience for being on. And that's going to conclude the webinar for today. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, guys.